When you turn over your book and you're actually part of the writing crew on this, what did you tell them they absolutely couldn't lose from the first book to the screen?
I never actually had that conversation. And I'm being really honest with you. When I first started meeting with Jane, she was so on top of what the important things were about the story. And it was more about how can we keep as much of it as possible. There were things where I wanted to be very sure, for example, that Diana was not turned into a graduate student or not an academic on the grounds that who really wants to see a college professor on the television, who's, et cetera. So there were just certain little aspects of things, like I didn't want to lose the science, and Jane was like, how would we lose the science? I don't know. So it was more, in weird ways, it was some of the sort of intellectual kind of content and about origin and species decline and things like that I really was most concerned might kind of have all the edges filed off. But otherwise.
Did you talk to people prior to Jane and Bad Wolf about making a film, and were there some of them not quite so empathetic?
There was a kind of stampede when the book was first bought, and it was it was first optioned by Warner Brothers. So there was an 18-month option on Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers brought an incredibly talented set of producers, Denise Denovi and Allison Greenspan together. They hired a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright named David Auburn to do the script. It just wasn't possible to squash that book into 90 minutes. It wasn't for lack of talent, for lack of anybody trying. It was just utterly defeating. And so when we sort of paused and hit reset and had a moment to think and reflect, and when I got off tour, it was just a case where I was pretty clear it should go to television, and I couldn't, honestly. If you had sort of a bucket full of people, you can imagine doing this. Jane Tranter would have just been at the top of that anyway. I mean, I have such respect for her body of work that it was like I kind of pinched myself.
So can we talk a little about what kind of adaptation is, like for the fans, for the book fans, but also for the ones who are discovering this story?
I think always with an adaptation, what you hope you do is you can reach people who maybe the books didn't reach for whatever reason. It wasn't the right moment in their life, right? The first book came out 7 years ago. So people who were maybe 13 when the first book came out are now 20 and might be more interested in it than they would have been at 13. So, we're always looking to expand the readership, the audience as much as possible. But I think really what we wanted to do was to bring aboard new fans without alienating the existing fans of the book. And that is actually a very hard nut to crack.
We were talking earlier about, and I'll remind you because it's very apposite towards that question, is that the book is written in a certain style. You have a viewpoint, you have a voice. It's seen through Diana Bishop. But unless you're going to film it in exactly the same way, with, as we said, a voiceover, narration, explaining who these people are, what are you going to do? You have to take those people and say, well, where, as you said, where are they on that particular moment when Diana Bishop is doing this? We live it very intensely, what happens to her at this moment. But where is Peter Knox and Matthew Clement at that moment? You have to start building their lives. So it's massive, the unpicking. It has to get, I would think, you have to lose it in a way in order to rebuild it. It's a huge amount of work. And
I think, for me, I think one of the first things I said to Jane when I went into the meeting was, I said, okay, first thing off, there's no way we can do this from Diana's point of view and make it work. No way. It just won't work because, what we need to do is sort of back up and figure out, keep expanding out and make that whole world and then set her out in it and walking around. And I hope, if you got to see any of the clips, that was one of the things that maybe struck you if you were a reader of books, was like, oh wait, there's this world that's happening. Obviously, when Diana makes a call to her aunts, it's received somewhere else, and there's a reaction there that maybe she's not aware of. And so, I think it's almost like value-added tax. It's like we're trying to sort of add to the value of the story and expand on it in a way that will still feel to a devoted reader like maybe they've just somehow gotten like the behind the scenes glimpses that they kind of, I guess that happened, but never saw it before now. So that's how we kind of really approach the adaptation process.
Question I'd like to ask, because I'm fascinated. I'm old enough to remember that television, especially in the UK, was looked on as a poor relation to doing movies. The movie side of things, and a lot of that will come down to the commercial aspect, that the money on a franchise of a film that could be done and then would travel the world was the big prize. And that television didn't have the kind of budgets.
Right.
And so they were the poor relation. It's very much to do with period work in the BBC, and that years ago it would be very hard and adapting Dickens and things like that. Very small sets, hardly any big scenes with lots of people, and that was left to the film world. That's kind of completely gone now. This is where the budgets are to have the best possible realization of your characters.
But I think in a weird way sometimes that what happens is everybody goes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and like, how are we going to do more action, more explosion, more Technicolor, more this, more that, whatever. And I think that there's also been this wonderful undercurrent on so much television, and I think it's one of the reasons I'm so excited that we're with the Sundance family is that it's this kind of these stories and these conversations and being able to enter in more quiet ways into people's lives, and so when I think about like maybe what a movie adaptation of Discovery of Witches would be, it would be all about the special effects. And what I love about our adaptation is that it's all about that interpersonal community conscience, which I just don't think
you just wouldn't have the time.
No, you wouldn't have the time, and I think the budget would dictate that you blew more stuff up.
For instance, and I hope it's in there, I haven't seen enough myself, but you wrote these two characters, Satu and Peter Knox, and he discovers this witch who has phenomenal power, but she's maverick and she's a law unto herself. And he is very formal, and he's a very he's just a much more formal character who runs in the congregation, which is like a House of Representatives and a Senate, I guess. But anyway, he is used to a political world of how to behave, and he is used to manipulating people, getting them to do what he wants. And then he meets this witch who is just not on the same wavelength. She's not against him. She just doesn't understand. I found that so exciting. We got to work with this great actor, Malin Buska, and she. We would often find humor.
I wish she had been here today because on our All Witch panel, because Owen and Malin, Peter and Satu, end up with this kind of really interesting work relationship.
Yeah. We wouldn't have had time if we were doing a film to do all that.
No.
We wouldn't have had time.
But you get this kind of great sense, and it also
I love it.
So it kind of makes you, for anybody who's read the books, think to yourself, oh my God. So while Diana and Matthew are back in the 16th century in series 2, or doing what they're doing, what are Peter and Satu going to get up to over the course of that we've just not ever seen or been able to explore? But again,
it was just the dynamic that was there, and we could develop that, and we could have gone further with it. It's just simply things like, so you have a kind of moment you think, oh, that's a good trope, that's the powerful, so the approachability, like And he says to her, because he doesn't trust her, she's just like, she's going to give the game away. You stay here. I'm going into the library. You stay here. Don't come in. You stay here. And he goes in, and the first thing she does is walk straight in. So you undercut that usual sort of the big male, dominant thing. I love she just walks straight in.
Gives him the evil eye, which came straight from her. So.
It's lovely to have that room.
Yeah.
To have the room.
And to really process it.
Yeah.
And can I ask as well, there's obviously the 3 books. Is it a very fixed plan to do 3 seasons, or are there thoughts about possibly branching out beyond that into original material beyond the books?
Well, what's interesting is there's the 3 books in the trilogy, but there are additional books coming out in the world. So there's actually a new book coming out on September, 4 days after the television show, called Time's Convert, that goes into depth in the backstory of one of the vampire characters. So it's kind of an expanding book universe, which may or may not affect what they decide they want to do with the characters, on the screen, because the next book sort of picks up about a year after the end of the 3rd book, and so there would be a way that they could just keep rolling along if they wanted to. I think as of now, we're thrilled and delighted that Sky and Sundance want to make 3 seasons of it, but you never know what might come.
Exactly.
And what good people like Owen will have room for in their schedule, but it would be.
Well, the thing is, when chemistry is good, you can't predict that. You can guess at it, but you can't. There's no legislation, and then when it does happen, and people bounce off and take it on, and then put it back, and the writing, and the actor, and the designers, and the producers, they enable that. That's what. It doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any better. So, what else are you looking for? Unless I'm going to become a producer and all that, which maybe I should at some point. But it's just great. It's a really great place to be.
I love your inspiration, or I'd love to know what it is for the Covenant. Like why this is the way that it is, and then also why witches and demons and vampires, and not also werewolves and Nephilim and something else.
So, as a historian of science, I guess I'm kind of like a professor of worldview and world building, because that's really all that science is. And what's most striking to me is that most worldviews are pretty simple, and they're relatively streamlined, and then they get sort of embroidered in all sorts of interesting ways for interesting reasons. But there's a lot of worldviews that are about 3s and 4s, or 3s and 4s and 7s. There's this amazing patterns around the world in different cultures. And so I stuck with those. I stuck with the tried and true, sort of the 3, 4, there's 9 orders of, there's 9 is a good number. There's 9 justices on the Supreme Court. So if you're wondering why there's 9 members of the Covenant, even back in 2008, I was a little bit worried about what might be happening to that. So that's all, just part of that kind of, for me to be thinking about a world that kind of hold up the weight of 3 books, there's got to be enough structure to kind of hold up all that meat, and that was the way I approached it.